Benvenuti a Ciao Bella. I'm your host, Erica Firpo. For the past 20 years, I've made my home in Rome, where I've worked as a journalist contributing to publications including Afar, Washington Post, Lonely Planet, and Travel and Leisure. I love sharing the stories of Italy's pioneering creators, and I'm bringing these stories directly to you on Ciao Bella. Every week, I'm joined by contemporary artists, heritage artisans, designers, culinary experts, innovative aesthetes, and more. At the crossroads of evolution and tradition, the past and the future, they are working and creating to define and redefine 21st century Italy. Join me as we see Italy through their eyes. I love a good walk and secretly think of myself as a flaneur. So does Stephen Oddo, who put a whole new spin on walking with Take Walks, the walking tour company he co-founded in 2009 in Rome. In the 15 years since its creation, Take Walks has spread across Europe and North America. Today, Stephen joins me to talk inspiration, Italy, and the ever-present conversation on overtourism in travel. I'm just curious, why Rome?
I had been living here for a number of years, and I saw the opportunity that tours were being purchased online in advance. And at the time when I first moved here, it was really kind of a lot more on the ground. People were walking up and like kind of retail spots, and
You want to go? You want to go to the Colosseum? Want to skip the line at the Vatican?
yeah. So there was a lot of that, and to be honest, it was quite a mess.
It was like the Wild West.
It was the Wild West, and I thought it had gotten a bit cutthroat, and people were there were like security guards literally to like guard the ticket sellers of various areas. And I said, you know what, this doesn't really make sense for us to try to compete in this space. Why don't we just make our focus entirely online? And so that was one of the approaches we did, was 100% online sales approach. And then the company was really about building a brand focusing on quality tour guides. A lot of the companies at that point were just kind of more commoditized. They were selling an attraction, tour this attraction, or maybe a whistle stop tour on a bus. With a guide maybe on or maybe not. We really wanted to focus on high quality guides that were vetted, smaller groups, because again, at the time we were seeing 55-person charter buses walk around the city, opening up, and cruises were a big offender of this as well. And I mean, that's a kind of experience. It's not quality for the guide or the guest, right? Nobody really wants to take 100 people around the city in 80 to 100 degree heat. It's not. So that was really what it's about. It's about smaller groups. Our group size was always maximum 12 to 15, depending on the site. And then we really wanted to have more innovative approaches to the product, because, and I still think this is true today, a lot of the attractions that customers are visiting are kind of all doing things the same way. We were talking earlier about the Louvre and how the tours of the Louvre still today are pretty much Venus de Milo, the Winged Victory, and the Mona Lisa. And everybody's doing the same tour for 2 hours, and they're on the same exact itinerary. The Vatican was like this as well. So we thought innovative approaches, or trying to partner with the museums to come up with new ways to visit it, new times, new routes, new rooms, and so that was really the approach. And it's still what we do today in cities all over the world.
Well, you've kind of spawned from Rome to, it's all over Italy. Mm-hmm. Are you in France?
Yep, yeah, we're in 28 cities now.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, we're in every major Italian tourism destination. We're in France, Spain, Greece, Ireland, United Kingdom, Amsterdam and Netherlands, and then in North America, in the US and in Canada. So, it's North America and Europe is our main.
So I'm just curious, because what was the kind of kernel that brought you to Rome?
Yeah, that's a good question. It was sort of on a whim. I had graduated university a little early. I studied archaeology and philosophy, anthropology, and was very interested in the history of art, and always had been. And I had never been to Rome, and I grew up in a travel family. Both of my parents are in the travel industry, in hotels and cruises, and then traditional travel agents. So I was really exposed to travel product growing up, but I had never been to Rome. And I'm like, here I am, somebody who loves history, art. I've been to London many times, Paris, but never Rome. So I said, I'll come for a few months, really explore. When I finished school, my parents said, hey, you could have some money since you finished early. You saved us money, so you can have some. I said, great. So I'll go travel around and do the backpacking thing. And I think I kind of was at the end of the backpacking era where kids actually had backpacks on and were taking trains around Europe. But I did that, and it was really great. My uncle had done it, so he sort of encouraged me. And when I was doing that, I actually met people who were standing out front of the Coliseum, and they were not, I met some of the sellers of tickets, but there were also tour guides who were out there doing kind of off-the-cuff tours, gathering a group together from shouting at the line, as you were saying. And I thought, this is such an interesting little microeconomy of people. And I would, of course, eventually learn that it's not quite a microeconomy. It's actually maybe the world's most successful tourist destination. And that's part of what I realized when I was here is, just how much there was to do and how willing people were to purchase tours of so many different things. It's not really like that in other cities. Rome has just this unique ability to create almost infinite products for customers to experience and tours. And we've done that. I mean, I think we've created something like 100 different tours of Rome over the years. And they're not all on sale still, but we have maybe, let's say, 40 or 50 that we run now.
Wow. This is a really good point to kind of fast forward now to 15 years later. It's 2024. And times and mentalities have really changed, because like when you were talking about coming to Rome, and I casually said it was the Wild West of tourism, which I firmly believe, because it was insane, and and because it is interesting to think about it like at the turn of the century, the turn of the 21st century.
Makes it sound old.
It does, but I think give us another 10 years and we are really going to frame it that way. Like, it was so different at the turn of the century, but at the turn of the 21st, which is just nuts to think about. But, now we're talking like back then, I think, I don't think as much over tourism was the conversation, but now people are really talking about like, hey, there's just like, they look, especially post-COVID, there's the revenge tourism and over tourism. And in fact, I was just reading this article in the New York Times the other day about over tourism and how they were saying how some cities are trying to tame it, whether it's through different revenue programs, like what's going on in Venice, which is not, I just want to, like, for the city of Venice, I just want to say one thing. They're not trying to tame tourism by doing that. They're at the present moment, aside from that, I'm not even going to say that off the record, but they're right now, they're just in the research phase. They just want to monitor where people are going. They're not even caring where they're going. They just want to see what they're doing right now. Because they're trying to figure out what the hell, what are, and that brings me back to Rome, which is, you talk about creating 100 different tours for Rome, or different variations of things, and different ways of seeing things. But people come and they're coming because they've got to get to the Colosseum and the Vatican. It's the only time they're going to do it.
Absolutely.
So what's, let's dive into this concept of over tourism and what you're thinking about it.
Yeah, well, I do think a lot about it, and I think that the example you just gave of Venice is a good one, where the entire city is suffering from over tourism. Like, it's that's the destination problem, and there's a lot of issues in there. And I'm very, very supportive of the no grande navi movement in Venice to try to limit the destruction of the lagoon, which has been happening for far too long with giant cruise ships. So that's a destination-wide problem. Rome is unique because Rome doesn't really have a city problem of over-tourism so much as it has a site-based problem, as you just mentioned, Colosseum.
Wow, that's a great. I look at it as an infrastructure issue.
Yeah.
I like how you say a site-based problem.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an infrastructure. The infrastructure of Rome is sufficient to handle the number of customers that come here, the visitors that we get. It's places like Florence, or places like Cinque Terre. It's places like Venice in Italy that suffer. The entire destination can't handle. That's not the infrastructure set up for that. Here, this infrastructure is, but there isn't, to your point on Colosseum and Vatican, they don't have the infrastructure to handle the number of people that want to visit those sites. On the numbers we see on any given day, there's at least twice as many customers that want to visit those attractions during high season than there is tickets available. So you have an immediate problem there, right? Like, there's just too many people that want to do those two sites, and particularly between the hours of 10 a.m. and noon, or between the hours of 2 p.m. and 4, those, that stretch, right? On either side of lunch, not too early, not too late, that is, the demand is enormous. And so, the question then is, well, what can you do about that, right? I mean, And there's not a whole lot of options you have, but one, I think that they're doing a great job at the Parco Arqueologico del Colosseo at creating more of a zone, right? And this has been a long project. We talk about the turn of the century. At the turn of the century, the entire Forum and Palatine were just open parks for free.
Yep,
You could just wander in. And we were speaking earlier about the Pantheon. It's like, how nice. I can remember when you could just walk in and out of these.
When you didn't have to get a ticket to go in.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a tough one because it's controversial. You say, oh, I really loved being able to just walk in and out of there. Think about how many people could experience it, 100%. But then think about the negative side of that. All those people going in for free means it overcrowds. There's too much humidity in the site. There's too much, rubbing on the floor over years and years and years. So the renovation costs are high. So you have this issue where you want to keep it up to standard. You don't want to potentially create a risk at the building and damage in the building, which many of these sites have. And the best way to do that is to, number one, limit the number of passengers that are going through there, and number two, using the money that you raise to actually fund the renovation of the site. And I'll just say, Italy.
Yeah, that's the sound of Italy regenerating itself, right?
I was just saying, I mean, Italy is a great example of renovation and regenerative tourism at work, because you can see how much is improving over time. Look at what's happened since they closed the Forum and Palatine. They have renovated tens of homes of ancient palaces,
Right.
domuses, different areas. They just opened that beautiful Nymphaeum under the gardens of Barberini there. They've opened more recently the Domus Tiberiana, which is an enormous project, decades. But it's truly magnificent what they've done in renovating just in the Forum and Palatine. But to the point before, Forum and Palatine had to sort of bolt on to the Colosseum, because the Colosseum is obviously where the draw is, and that's
Right.
where the limit is in customer footfall. But the renovation works they've done in the Colosseum have expanded the number of customers they can take through the Colosseum, because they can take people through the back door to the arena floor, to the underground. Now they've opened the attic terrace. So by adding new places they can visit and investing in the infrastructure to handle that, meaning, wheelchair access, elevators, and all that, they're making it more accessible. And
You sound like, I mean, I know you know a lot about this, but you sound like you're actually like really involved with the ministry and things like that. I mean, what is your relationship with them?
Yeah, so we actually, at Hornblower Group last year, we spearheaded a partnership with the Parco Arqueologico. It was the first public-private partnership of its kind on an international scale.
Oh.
Obviously, they've done work with Todd's before for the big renovation project about 10 years ago. So this was the first time they'd worked with a non-Italian company. And most of the companies they've worked for on these projects, if you Google renovation and restoration work in Italy, it's almost always fashion or energy companies, which is like, those are great. I really appreciate that.
It's Bulgari, Fendi,
yeah,
Enel,
absolutely.
exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Eni,
good
Enel.
for them. Like, I love it.
Yes, they're great partnerships, and again, you can really see the value that they've brought. And to be honest, I thought like it would be great for us to be able to do the same thing, to be involved, to give back, to expand. And this project in particular was about the Ludus Magnus, which is the Roman gym where the gladiators were training center, just outside the Colosseum.
Which is is one of those places where people, they walk by. There's the bus stop there, the tram stop, and people don't even pay attention to it.
Absolutely, and it also that there's a famous story. A lot of the tour guides, if you take a tour with walks or others, you'll hear about the tunnel that the gladiators would use to access. In fact, it's in the famous movie Gladiator, the scenes of him going through the tunnel, and so everybody kind of has in mind what this looks like. And it's there. Like, it's not like there's this idea of a tunnel. So they actually renovated the tunnel. They opened up that space further back. They installed a wonderful illumination and projection that you can really understand where this tunnel goes, what it led to. They have this beautiful video that plays of the gladiators. You can hear the sounds of the gladiators. And it really brings it to life, because one of the things that I've always thought about the Colosseum is that it's this incredibly well-preserved building. But really what's famous about the building is the people that were in there and what they were doing, and you don't get a sense of that when you're standing in there looking at brick stairs, and you're like, where were the people? So this really kind of brought the people in, the gladiators in, and then now you can actually go see the elevators that they've rebuilt, and they're much more kind of interactive now. You can actually understand what's happening and how the people got up onto the arena. So
Yeah, just so everybody understands, he's talking about ancient kind of lift elevators. Like,
Oh, yes.
like human pulled,
For
like
lions.
pulley elevators. Not
Yeah.
because there is actually the Great Glass. I always call it the Great Glass elevator. That's in the new elevator that takes you up to the
Yes.
Attico level. Like there's a modern elevator, so we're not talking about
And
that.
that was actually just put in through another public-private partnership that was with the UNICEF.
Oh,
And,
good.
and
I didn't know.
they did a couple of concerts, sold tickets, and that helped to fund the elevator. So they're doing more and more of these things, and I think the fact that they have an outreach program, that they are working with private companies, they're getting these funds and they're using them right away. Like I said, you could see the work that's been done and appreciate it. Like it's brought in new artifacts into the Coliseum. You know, the glass elevator is making it possible for people to get up to the attic at all and safely. And so again, that gives them more ability to sell more experiences, which is good.
But what do you say to all those people, or how do you respond to people who say, you know, I tried to get a ticket for the Coliseum, I just can't?
Well, that's always going to be a problem for the first thing we mentioned, right? There's just too many people who want it. So even like there's always going to be people who wanted to go that couldn't because, especially during high season, there's just too much demand. And they've actually, it's been a really complicated last 20 years. I've worked with the Coliseum almost 20 years now. And the previous administration was just changed out. So the concessionaire who operates the ticketing, and it's new as of, it was supposed to be about 3 or 4 years ago, and this has been sort of a battle, an actual legal battle to see who takes over this contract. So a new company has taken over. They have a new ticketing system. It's much better. It's much more sensible, the way they've approached trade and tourism companies like ours. It's much more fair. But there is always going to be the same issue you get with Taylor Swift tickets to the Coliseum, because people out there know that you can buy these tickets and resell them and scalp them. And that's the thing they've done a really good job approaching, because they work with professional tourism companies who are vetted, who have a history of selling actual tourism products, not just adding a markup and saying, come meet me to get your ticket, like something you do in Times Square at a Broadway show. So it's a lot more formal now. I think that's going to work, and also they've put new technology on the website to really improve that process, which was crashing daily. Like, it was ridiculous.
It was painful. I remember that.
And thankfully, it is better now. Am I saying you're definitely going to get a ticket if you try to get it on the day of? Not necessarily, but they do.
I was going to say, but they do something
They
like
do. I do recommend
one,
trying if you can.
I mean, I always tell people, buy your tickets as far in advance as you can, but last minute tickets do exist.
They've opened new ticket booths as well for that, and they have dedicated inventory for that for different time periods. So if you go the day before and you try to get tickets from the booth and they don't have them, try going the morning of. Try going later in the day. Ask if you can say, is there a slot available later in the day? And you might find something. Also, if you can't find any tickets, what I tell people is look at the tours that they sell. They're not much more money from the Coliseum's website,
for sure.
but they often do, and it might seem kind of silly, but they often do tours in other languages that have plenty of spots available. So, do you speak Spanish or Italian? Maybe not. But do you want to go and see these special areas of the Coliseum?
What's the objective?
And you have headsets, like you can listen to your own tour while you're on tour with them, and that's totally fine.
Whenever I'm in Naples, I'm hungry and I can't help it. The city is meant to be devoured by mouth. In fact, the last time I visited, I decided to indulge in every sense and booked a food tour with Devour. For a few hours, we explored the Quartieri Spagnoli, talking tomatoes with the fruttivendolo, tasting delicious mozzarella, and of course, eating the city's iconic pizza. Led by passionate local guides, Devour takes you off the beaten path and into the side streets to discover hidden gems and culinary history. Savor the flavors, tradition, and hospitality that makes Naples a food lover's paradise. Book a food tour with Devour, where every bite tells a story. For Naples tours and more, visit devourtours.com.
Now, you talked a little bit about, I mean, we briefly mentioned the word regenerative tourism, because what we've just talked about is like the Coliseum and how, closing it off, changing the ticket regime has benefited the sites that are here and opened up things and allowed more things to be possible. But in regard to regenerative tourism, like, I'm thinking more about the actual community around these sites. There's always that concern that, wow, Venice is being turned into a mausoleum. Rome is going to be a mausoleum. You know, nobody was here during lockdown. That's what everybody said. And the center of Rome was empty because nobody lives in Rome anymore. How do you feel that like a tourism company such as Walks can encourage, and I know you guys do, because I do know you guys do this with a lot of the food tours that you lead. I feel is really nice because you're going back into these local places. So essentially, you know, supporting smaller businesses, and I mean that's in the food area. But I'm just curious as to your kind of take on that.
Yeah, I mean, that is exactly what we do. We all of our Devour food products are going and visiting local makers, local artisans, local chefs. We actually opened up our own space as well that we're doing. We're having different guest chefs come in and doing special events.
Oh, I didn't realize you were having guest chefs.
Yeah, that just started. So we had our first one last week, and we'll be doing more of those. So we had a Michelin star chef do an event there. He's worked at a number of different Michelin restaurants. But anyway, so you know those neighborhood tours are really great because we take people into Trastevere and look at it in the lens of their historic culinary tradition. Same thing with Testaccio. We do it in the Centro Storico. Go to the markets, the actual markets where people do their daily shopping, and you really can get a sense of the community that does live here. And you know, Rome is unique in that there is a pretty large population who is residents, and not just expats or tourism companies. There's a lot of real Italians living here. Now Venice, a little different story to your point.
Well, yeah.
But it's a little less of that. It's much more, maybe some artists live there, but it's not the community is not really sustainable there. And to your question, I think, Rome isn't a mausoleum yet, and Rome is big enough and has so many neighborhoods that I think it can support these things. And out to Garbatella, for example, we're looking at doing a tour that visits some of the more further afield
a lot of people don't know Garbatella. I actually have one of my aunts used to live there.
No way.
And it's really cool. I love walking through Garbatella for the street art, but also because it's that it's a little community that was, just as for the listeners, a little community that was kind of redeveloped in the 1920s, late 20s, 30s under Mussolini or under the fascist regime, but specifically taking into account integrating housing populations, different economic levels. It's really fascinating when you go there. Like if you look at all the villa, I mean, that would be a lot of fun. I would love for people to go on a tour of Garbatella because they would have no idea what they're looking at.
Yeah, I mean, and I think this is where it gets to your point of a lot of these companies, a lot of these restaurateurs and local chefs, they want to stay open, but because the business isn't necessarily enough to support the restaurant year round, they need to find ways to fill in the gaps, right? So a lot of the tourism companies that work, even in the very busy city destinations, what we try to do is help solve their problem. In the same way we approach attractions and say, okay, because you're so busy between 10 and 2 and 2 and 4 or whatever it is, what if we make our tours all very early in the morning or very late right before you close?
Okay.
So we actually work with them and say, well, what's the problem you're trying to solve? They say, everybody wants to buy the 10 a.m. tickets. Say, okay, we'll only work with you on the 8 and 9 a.m. tickets. Okay, that's great because we actually need more people to come then. It's the same with the neighborhoods, right, where they say, hey, I have really good business Friday, Saturday, Sunday between the hours of this and this, but it would be great if we could get some business later after the lunch rush or earlier before the lunch rush. They bring in the tourism then, and that allows them to make enough to keep the business open either all year round or longer hours or keep the restaurant open at all. And unfortunately, a lot of them did close during the pandemic. So obviously they relied on that tourism money to survive. And so that's why it's important that if you want to retain the character of some of these neighborhoods, adding that element of partnering with tourism to keep them alive, to keep them thriving, to keep them investing in their product is why these can be really great, regenerative developments for cities. It's harder with the outside of the food space because obviously customers, guests on tours, they want to see something that's impressive. If you can go, out to the aqueducts, the Parco degli Acquedotti, that's wonderful, but it's not really doing much for the community around the aqueducts, right? I mean, unless we, like I said, stop at a local restaurant or something, and many times we do that. But, it's these are the kinds of things that you have to kind of weave the expectations of the guest. They want to see ABC, and then you try to add something unique and say, okay, well, we're going to take you to this other neighborhood. We're going to show you this wonderful thing. And so you try to do a bit of both to solve the where's all the demand, and then where can
Right.
we twist it just a little bit to make sure we include something special that is off the beaten track, and try to, another good example of that happening near the Colosseum, as we talked about before, is Nero's Golden House, right? So the Domus Aurea, right? I know your husband has done quite a bit of work over there in the past, right?
I feel like we live in the Domus Aurea.
Lucky you. I mean, it's an incredible site. Obviously, right near the Colosseum. It's maybe more important for a lot of historical and art history reasons. The Domus Aurea has been such an amazing place. A little bit controversial. It's been used for some great exhibits in the last few years, and they use the VR installation. I mean, they're really throwing everything at that site. If it's a buzzword, they're doing it.
I know. We were there for we were there for one VR show, and unfortunately, like the day we got there, like half the stuff was not working.
Oh no!
But you know what? It was the cool. It's still the coolest site. It's still the coolest site.
And it's right there. And people don't. I mean, let's say 30 years ago when it was opened the first go around, it was really popular. And people knew about it. Guidebooks wrote about it. The news was talking about it. And I think that even when I lived here, it had just closed or was about to close in 2004 and 5, somewhere around there is when it closed. But it was well known. People were looking for it. People were trying to go there. They waited too long. I mean, the renovation took a long time. It took almost 20 years. And I don't think people know about it. So it's kind of, they're having a harder time creating the awareness.
Well, I think that it's a mix of that, and I think the people that do know about it are frustrated because sometimes it can be really hard getting those tickets.
Yes.
Like that's part of, like, I guess that's also that conversation about information. How you're presenting what you guys are talking about with your company, but how you're presenting the site, how you're presenting what's going on around it.
Yeah, and if you're including it at all, and I would venture to guess, if you checked of the tour operators operating in Rome, I'd say probably 18 out of 20 are not offering the Domus Aurea at all. We've done a lot of different partnerships with them trying to push it or include it in various packages of the product. But I think that is one thing. Is like, okay, are you selling it at all? Like, that's, I think, the barrier of entry there. Like, because if you're not selling it, well, I think it is up to the tour operator sometimes to be the ones who have to invest in creating awareness about attractions and new things to then take a little bit of the demand pressure off of the Colosseum, or at least spread it around a bit.
Well, that's the kind of sometimes I find myself in conversations about this with different journalists or like travel writers that are like, well, you should really not even write about the Colosseum. Right. You shouldn't write about the Colosseum. You should tell people to go to all these other places. And I'm like, you can't do that. You can't. If you have to be able to, I can definitely say I'm never going to say don't go to the Colosseum, go somewhere else, because I want people, if they want to go to the Colosseum, they should go to the Colosseum. Absolutely. But I do like to share these other places, which now then I want to put you on the hot spot with that. Yeah. Like, what are some of your favorite places aside from the Colosseum and Vatican in Rome? And then I want to ask you, what's your favorite spot in the Vatican?
Okay, yeah. So I mean, that's a good question, and actually, I think so. There's a new. I haven't been yet, but I will tell you a couple I've been to that I love. But there's a new museum that opened at just near the Colosseum. The Forma Urbis.
It's the coolest museum.
I might go out there today because I'm a big fan of all the things they're doing over there. These kind of expanding the region of that. I used to live in that neighborhood in Celio on the San Gregorio. And, it's just a wonderful little neighborhood. Again, right next to the Colosseum, not the same next to that the Domus Aurea is at, but the other side where the San Clemente Church is, which is another one of the most amazing places. It is very, very crowded now. Hard to get a ticket.
But can I say something? Yeah. And you're talking about the Forma Urbis Museum, which is just, it's a jewel. It's a jewel.
I'm so glad to hear that because I'm on my way. I'm going to head there after this. No, but truly, living in that neighborhood, seeing there was so much just in the Celio. Just in the area right next to the Colosseum. So many things, so many incredible churches, little hidden monasteries, ancient ruins that are propping up parts of churches. And that neighborhood I've always loved. So to hear that they've opened this new site is wonderful. The Villa Celimontana, I've been a big fan. They have the jazz festivals there every year. I don't think there's any better, if you ask me, what are the best experiences I've had in Italy? Almost always it's that kind of mix of a special event happening in an incredible destination that seems like it's impossible. Like people say, oh, did they do concerts in the Colosseum? Not so much in the Colosseum, but right on the Colosseum. Right. I've seen a number of major acts over the years, and who was it? Paul McCartney was there. We had Bryan Adams and Billy Joel at the Coliseum. I went to the Jazz at Montana many times, and I always love that because, again, it's in this perfect place with ruins around you. Down at the Baths of Caracalla, the ballet or the opera. Have you done one of those?
Yeah, a long time ago. You know, a museum that I love that I think a lot of people don't talk about, I think is the coolest thing to do in Rome, is the Museum of the Walls.
Oh yeah, I actually love it.
And that's right by the Casa del Jazz. So I was thinking about that.
Plenty of tickets available every day of the year there.
I love that.
Love that. And you can actually walk up on the walls.
On the bastions,
Yeah.
like you're like walking like you're a century from ancient Rome. It's pretty cool.
Just if you ask me, what's your list of favorite museums in Rome? It'd be hard to kind of whittle down. But of that would be Palazzo Massimo alle Terme. Of course, it has the bronze boxer and the frescoes from many of the Roman villas. That I think, again, it's empty most of the time. It's really sad that it's empty. They do keep it really, really nice. It's a beautiful museum.
Have you seen now they redid the sidewalk in front of it because they're trying to. So if you get out of Termini, which right now looks like
the train station,
like it's nuts. It's
Oh, no.
There's so much work going on. But what they've done is they've expanded the sidewalk. So they're trying to. Because I think one of the problems. There's another problem I think that like museums like Palazzo Massimo face is that they're almost in like a sort of a Bermuda Triangle where things get lost, right?
Yes.
And it's really hard to like understand that. I mean, you can see they have big posters that there's the museum there, but the orientation, there's something off. So they've just expanded the sidewalk, and I think they're changing the entrance to go around the side. So the sidewalk's much wider. So that's going to be
really great.
So hopefully that'll make because. Before it was just kind of like, oh, there's a palazzo there, right? Can I go in? I don't know.
Yeah.
Now I think they're going to make it more like museum, which will be awesome because I agree with you. Like I love going to there's like that triclinium room it's the Villa Livia frescoes that are
that's
just
the room.
Yeah,
you sit in that room, you can't believe it's not a Monet.
It's nuts
because it feels like that.
Yeah.
And that's one of my favorite spaces in Rome is that room. In fact. And just the artifacts are so wonderful there. So that's but let's say that's number one. We'll put that there. And then in terms of the Vatican, the Vatican's a real challenge for a lot of different reasons, which we don't have time to get into today. But I think that the idea that the Vatican is also changing as well. They've changed administration a number of times in the last 10 years. Most recently last year, a different management, different approach. Different partnerships, and they are investing in more sites around the Vatican and making it easier for people to visit. And yes, is it too crowded? Absolutely, but you have to understand that it's a major source of revenue for the church to be able to even keep up and expand all the kinds of things that they do across the world. And so they are going to make sure it's accessible. And at least I find that people don't have as much difficulty with the tickets at the Vatican as they do at the Coliseum.
Do you have when you go to the Vatican? Do you have like when you're visiting the Vatican museums? Is there anything? I mean, I'm sure you've been there a million times, but is there anything that you're like, this is my best friend here? Like, this is the thing I like to see.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Cappella Nicolina, which is the Fra Angelico chapel in one of the oldest parts of the Vatican.
Which is
people...
pretty tough to get to see.
It's very tough to get to see.
It's never open one, I guess.
It's not really open. Yeah, it's a wonderful little chapel. It's only booked through private visits, and we're actually right now Wux is not offering a tour that includes the Cappella Nicolina. Sometimes on our Keymaster tour, which is the very early morning where you go with the clavigero. Yeah, we're a great partner on that product. Oh, that's great. Yeah,
that was really cool.
It's super special. Look, it's a very expensive, special opportunity to do it. It's expensive because you're the only group that is opening the Vatican with the official Vatican Keymaster holding the keys to the Sistine Chapel. You get to unlock the doors. It's the kind of product that, yes, it's once in a lifetime. And if you're an art history buff, it is truly, it's not like a normal visit. It's like a whole other type of experience. So, but on that tour, sometimes we do go in the Cappella Nicolina. There are tours that do include it. And I just think it's a gem because these tiny chapels that are so intimate and they were private, but with these incredible frescoes, I think that's one of the great ones. Obviously, the Brancacci Chapel is another similar, a little bit larger, but yeah, I'm a bit. Or the Scavagni Chapel up in Padua, another great one. These. Frescoed.
You like the chapels?
I'm a big frescoed chapel guy. Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely, you can't be. So that's great. And the Vatican, I love to climb the dome. climb the dome, go up to the facade, have a
I
coffee on the
haven't-
facade. It was the last time you did
I
that.
haven't done that in ages. but actually, that's like one of that's such a cool thing. I think what a lot of people don't know, because one of the beauties of Rome is it's full of these little idiosyncrasies. So, for example, like you're saying, you can climb the dome, you're up on the top of the building, and there's a little coffee shop.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't
You
get
can
better
get
than
the
that, right?
elevator, So what's great is I think the elevator is €8. You can go, and it can be a line. My recommendation would be, if you don't take the tour, which we do offer, that goes up to the dome, you can actually just go in the first thing in the morning, go straight. Don't go in the church right away, because once you're in there, you can get into the church just fine, because you actually exit oftentimes in the church. So don't worry about going into the church. Go straight to the line where they sell tickets to the roof, to the cupola, and you can take the elevator. So the elevator is €8, right? You get in the elevator, you go up, you're on the facade now. So now you haven't done any climbing. You can go straight to the coffee shop, have one of the best views in Rome, enjoy a coffee up there. Yeah, you paid $8 to get access to it, but now it's like you're literally at your own coffee shop overlooking Rome. It's quite a hack. So I'm a big fan of that spot.
I'll tell you my little secret.
Yeah,
with
what's
that,
your secret?
Which is when you do get your coffee,
Yeah.
ask the guy to show you the carton of milk, because the carton of milk is it says it's the Vatican cows.
Oh, wow.
So you can make a little joke, which I do, and my kids are like, please don't ever do this again, and I'm going to do this publicly. So I'm like, holy cow.
Oh, my God.
But it is.
You
You
went
get
there.
I had to. It's amazing. Like, I'm not kidding. You see the carton. It has the papal stem on it. I mean, it's awesome, and it's like, holy cow.
That's amazing. I have to admit then something equally as silly. When one of our first Vatican tours we ever launched in 2010 was called Holy Seeing.
That's the tour for me.
Yes, that's it. And I'm actually a little bit guilty of putting way too many puns and alliterations, and I do get made fun of, because about half of our tours have titles that are named with some kind of silly alliterative or rhymes. I'm very stuck on this.
Now we need to hear
Not
at
being
least one more.
Crypts, Bones, and Catacombs is one that
that does. That sounds
the Premium Coliseum. We've done the Pristine Sistine is our top selling
Oh,
tour
the
for many-
Pristine Sistine.
If it rhymes or is alliterative, you can tell. You know for a fact that I was the one who wrote the name of that tour. And I'm sorry. I can't help myself.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Ciao Bella. The editor of Ciao Bella is Mastro. Production manager is Jenna Spray. If you're new to Ciao Bella, take a peek at ciaobella.co, our all-encompassing Italy-focused website, where you'll find insider insight on contemporary Italy, and sign up for our newsletter for new episodes and articles. Follow me on Instagram at Erica Firpo, and follow Ciao Bella on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you like to listen. Leave us a rating or comment. Ciao, ciao.